Hey, this is Dr. Pete, and I was up on a Monday morning grading and getting some feedback and all that type of stuff. And a couple students had called me pretty early about the class. I have some classes wrapping up at different schools, and it's always a good time because really for me, it allows me to clean the books off and get everything done and grades put in, and it's like a feeling of finishing something. Students, of course, have the sense that, okay, I'm done with this class and I can move on to the next one, and they're one step further along in their education. So that's exciting as well. So it's just, I think it's generally speaking a good time. What I always love though is schools have the final discussion post, and sometimes they'll have the let's have a discussion, and I think what really needs to be said about these is there's a time to say things and a time not to say things. And so, for example, professors do not like to talk about things specific to students, like relating to their grade or if there's a health problem or accommodations. It's not about FERPA, it's just about professionalism and that you really don't want to make comments directly towards someone. So when a student does that, be it positive or negative, it can put a professor kind of in a spot. You really don't want to respond because it may look like you're trying to respond specifically to them, like in other words, their grade. But in reality, you kind of have to respond because there may be something very positive you want to reinforce or something negative you don't. And again, a lot of these videos I do kind of help, and a lot of students will say, I didn't really think about how professors see things or the psychology of doing schoolwork. So, for example, and just use this in general, I had a student last semester who had a similar issue that some students have every semester. Okay, this happens every semester. And they'll talk about things like APA, English, and grammar. And I really want to emphasize that when we talk about things, the reason I speak in certain terms of APA, grammar, English, and more how we write things is because at the end of the day, that's what you're graded on. So, for example, in the past, I'd say, well, this paragraph needs to be developed. And a student would come back and say, well, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, content. Or I can talk about the specific issue. It doesn't matter if it's business, leadership, poli sci. It doesn't matter. I would have to be like, well, here's an example. You can expand here. So while I can code it with content and make it look like that, I can also give you the solution, which happens to be an APA solution. When I talk about Goldilocks effect, 4 to 5 sentences, maybe 5 to 6 if you're a short writer, it's not that I'm obsessed with APA, it's that I'm giving you the textbook. This is how the playbook, as they call it, this is how you do a paragraph, and this is how you break it down. And if you want me to, I can tell you the first sentence says this, the second does this. I can really break it down. I don't like to, but at least if I give you the general concept, or if a paragraph needs a citation, well, generally speaking, they do. So, and then if you cite that, then you go to the book and you cite it this way. And the reason is students that aren't told that, or they're told improperly, then what happens is a professor comes along and says, well, this is well written, but where did you use the sources? What's yours, what's not? Why is this word for word and it's not cited correctly? Then you get plagiarism, lack of analysis. I mean, you get all these other issues. So, but one of my favorites is when a student will sit there and come back and say, well, I'm an expert in business and let me explain to you what I know. And it's like, well, that I appreciate that, but you need to also look at what the book is telling you or the sources you're finding. I can say I'm an expert in a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't want to find other people to say, hey, by the way, these are some things that support what I do. I always tell the story, I'll tell a story, but a style of story about student success. And I just had two recently, so I have to update my story bank. And I have two students. One was a gentleman who got a promotion based off the idea that he presented his information in a very organized manner. Again, Goldilocks effect, citing in each paragraph a member indicator or hint to cite or target rich environment to cite in each paragraph, good formatting like grammar, spelling, APA. And he did all these things. And he said, I thought about all the times you repeated those things in the videos. And then I figured it out. It wasn't about APA, it was just about developing my work better. Now, and he said those steps alone that were repetitive and organized and told to me over and over and over sunk in, and he did a great presentation. He said, then I looked at another one. There's a couple other ones, I guess. I don't know exactly what they looked like, but he said they were obviously college graduates who did not go through my class. That's what he told me. And he said they didn't have good grammar, spelling, they didn't cite things, they didn't organize things. It was just, I feel, I think, and it was horribly done, and they failed. And what failure meant in that job was he got promoted and got the project, and the other people stayed in their job, did not get promoted, did not get a pay raise. That was success. So while he may not have gotten an A in the class, he obviously got an A in the business, and that's a way of looking at it. Then there was a female student who came in and said that she had an email chain, and by the time she got done, her boss made it clear that she was literate. She had researched her comments, thought them out, and organized them. And she said it all went back to how we had discussion posts and how we organized our thoughts and did things. And I thought that was really reflective of she might not have had the best grade in class, but she got a project that, in essence, a promotion from her. It's not a promotion, but it is, if that makes sense. And she got the pay grade and all that. So it was really interesting to see that, and it's very rewarding to see that. So while I will take abuse, and I'll have someone claim to be an English major but have, like, all these spelling and grammar issues, I can't really defend what other people don't do. I can't defend the fact that if you do something wrong and someone doesn't correct you because they just want to get you moved along, I can't defend those things, and I will not defend those things. But I will say this: in this classes I teach, or if you ask for feedback on what you teach or what you're being taught, meaning a student, then I'm going to give it to you. And I can be honest, I can be direct, and I can be very forward, because at the end of the day, I'm secure in my life. I'm retired military. I don't have to worry about the teaching aspect of it. I teach because I love to teach. And I believe that when someone gives you feedback, while you may not agree or may not be what exactly you want to hear, listen to what they have to say first. And then if you really start pushing the buttons, what they should do is go back a little further and say, well, let's go over this a little bit more. Let's go into detail a little bit more and show you why these things are not true. And when they show you that, that doesn't mean that you double down and say, well, no, you're still the only person, or I don't like what your feedback is. If it's true, it's true. So, for example, if you misspell a bunch of words and you say that you have good grammar, then what am I supposed to think? Okay, I mean, what am I supposed to do as a professor? Just say, well, maybe it was just a bad day, it was a bad week, it was a bad course. I mean, you got to think about stuff like that. So before you throw down and before you get negative, I just had another student just recently, was very positive and very supportive, and the feedback was in a nice way, in the sense that I was like, yeah, I see where the student's going, and that is a good comment. Having said that, there are limits that professors have. A lot of them don't write the courses. A number of them do not write the rubrics. They don't have a lot of control over those things. So kind of put that in perspective a little bit. It might make it easier to really work through these issues, and to respect the fact that they're there to teach and instruct and really more facilitate. Some of us take it more personal and professional, and we take it to the next level and say, yes, we're facilitating, but we're also instructing. And remember, sometimes you have to show people things, and it may look like one thing, but in reality, when you actually apply it, it becomes quite a different thing. I may tell you about APA a lot, but it's really about developing and supporting your work. I may talk about researching a lot, but it's more about how do you add the comments of others with yours? How do we blend those things? Okay, how do we synthesize them? So always put those things in perspective. Some days you're going to be frustrated, and some days you're going to be very rewarded and positive. But at the end of the day, just remember those two students who, and this is just two examples of many examples I've had over 12, 15 years of teaching. I forgot. It depends if you count the military. But anyways, I was an instructor in the military too. So it depends how I've seen those success stories, and I know what it takes to be successful. And so keep those things in perspective. And while you may have a bad day, bad week, bad course, there's always a silver lining, and you're one step further along. And that's where the focus has to be. But anyways, if you ever need help, always feel free to drop me a line. I appreciate this topic, and also the other students that helped me to complete the topic, so with their success stories. Thank you, and best of luck.